There are only two teams on bye this week, so you should have a bunch of different options to choose in your starting lineup. Now, obviously, tier one, you already know you're going to start Barkley, Henry, Kyron, Kamara. Don't really need to talk about him. Maybe the only thing we have to say is, yes, welcome back, Alvin Kamara, to being a tier one running back, especially this week going up against the Panthers. You can make an argument to have him at 1 overall. Obviously, a lot of this hinges on Derek Carr being back this week, which is what is expected. Going down to tier two, we are going to have Bijan Robinson. Now, with Bijan, he's been a must-start running back every single week this year. I know everybody's wanted to laugh and say that we are too high on him, blah, blah, blah. Well, he's the running back 4 right now in fantasy points. So I don't know what's so funny. The man is giving you the consistent receiving usage. You've only had one game so far this season with fewer than 3 targets. You're printing games with 20-plus opportunities. If you're looking at the spread here against Dallas, you actually have Atlanta favored, and this should be one of the highest scoring games of the week. We know typically against this Dallas defense, you are wanting to go out there and run the ball. So I think it sets up perfectly for Bijan Robinson to absolutely crush as a top 5 back. Now, going over to our next running back with Breece Hall, I understand that maybe this seems like we're a little too high on him. With Breece, though, you do have the consistent receiving usage as well. Breece has not had a single game this year with fewer than 3 targets. At the same time, he's only had 2 games with fewer than 5 targets. Now, yes, of course, Braylon Allen did get involved, and Braylon Allen did score a rushing touchdown this past week, which is super frustrating. But right now, sportsbooks are actually putting the Jets as 2-point favorites over the Texans on Thursday night. So I think this should be a Breece Hall game. And with that in mind, actually, one of my favorite underdog picks this week is going to be Breece Hall to score a touchdown. You're getting vulture protection on Breece Hall on underdog, so you're going to get actually a refund if Braylon Allen vultures the touchdown at the goal line this week. Plus, you're getting a multiplier on top of Breece scoring a touchdown. So I'm super excited about that. Of course, if you wanted to check it out, you can find that link in the description and comment section. Promo code FLOCK on Underdog. We give 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, on top of that, you're going to be getting a free CJ Stroud pick, more than less than half a total yard for the Thursday night game, and a free team review in the live stream we are doing every single night. Now, going over to our next back, we're going to have Joe Mixon. With Mixon, the man literally just prints 20-point weeks. I actually have Mixon ahead of Breece Hall in our rest of season ranks. I just think that this is a tougher matchup here going up against the Jets. When you have no Diggs and you have no Nico in this offense, you're actually seeing sportsbooks put the mark at 20.25 points for the implied team total for this Texans offense. So it should be an average offense where Mixon is the true 3-down bell cow. Out of all running backs that are in tier 1 and tier 2, Mixon's team actually has the lowest projection. But with that being said, it doesn't matter because Mixon has been so damn good. I mean, back-to-back weeks with 25 carries. Kenneth Walker will be our next guy. Now, of course, the Seattle Seahawks got boat raced last week. But I mean, still, Walker's managed to be RB9 on the season with 2 games missed. You're looking at one of 2 outcomes for Kenneth Walker. You have a game environment in which maybe Seattle dominates start to finish, like week 1, where you see Walker get 20 carries. You have a game environment where maybe the Seahawks lose the game at the end of the day and they abandon the run. That's like week 5 against the Giants, where Kenneth Walker gets 8 targets. So Walker's kind of matchup proof. Here going up against the Rams, you actually have this as a spot where it should be a close game, only a 1.5 spread. So I do think you have a shot that the Seattle Seahawks can be able to run the ball. Going over to our next back, we are going to look at Jahmyr Gibbs. Clearly the Detroit Lions are the best offense in the NFL. Now, if we were looking at projections for this week, you actually do have the Lions offense projected to be worse than the Falcons, worse than the Ravens, worse than the Eagles. It's not the best matchup in the world going up against Green Bay. I would say if you are starting Jahmyr Gibbs, you almost want Jordan Love to be good to go for the Packers. I mean, because with Gibbs, this is the running back that they're going to be leaning on in a game environment where you actually have to have Jared Goff dropbacks. Where, of course, if the Lions boat race a team, the target volume is going to look a lot lower for Gibbs. Jonathan Taylor will be our next RB. So with Taylor, you get a bump up with no Anthony Richardson. The reason for this is not because I think this Colts offense is going to be 10,000 times better, which it may be. But with no Anthony Richardson, you're actually going to have a higher checkdown rate here from Joe Flacco, while at the same time, you're not going to have to worry about the quarterback at the goal line vulturing rushing touchdowns. So that should be a boost here for JT, where you even saw Jonathan Taylor last week against the Texans, over 100 rushing yards and the rushing touchdown. in what was just a completely dysfunctional offense. Now, I know everybody's going to be screaming at us that we have Devon Anan way too low. And I do want to reiterate, remember, we've been calling Anan the new prime Alvin Kamara, the running back that is an elite level receiving back in a good offense. And if he had that goal line role, I would be very willing to rank Anan ahead of guys like Kamara, ahead of Kyron, ahead of Henry. My only hesitation right now, not to have Anan as that true elite high-end RB1, even though that's exactly what he has been with Tua Tagovailoa playing, where you have 3 games played with Tua. Each one of those games, Anan scored at least 23 fantasy points. My only hesitation here is Raheem Mostert did score the 2 rushing touchdowns this past week. Now, obviously, Achan's the much better running back. Now, obviously, Achan has everything as a receiver. So I do want to give Achan the benefit of the doubt. He is still a running back 1 no matter what for us. Last time you saw this Dolphins team play Buffalo, you actually had 29.5 points for Devon Anan. So obviously absolutely crushed. I will point out, though, that the Bills are almost 7-point favorites here. And yeah, for that reason, James Cook should be a very exciting start. James Cook, last time he played Miami, you scored 28 points. I think you can very easily make an argument to have James Cook even higher in these rankings. Nonetheless, Achan Cook still very much running back 1s, guys that you absolutely have to start. And it is hilarious, of course, with the narrative that Josh Allen is always going to steal the rushing touchdowns from James Cook. And I still definitely think Allen will have rushing touchdowns going into the future. But right now you are sitting with a total of, I want to say, 7 rushing touchdowns through 7 games played for James. Now, Aaron Jones will be our next back. With Jones, this past week against the Rams, it wasn't great. Obviously, you'd rather have the running back in an offense that's able to move the ball down the field. You'd rather have the running back in the offense that is winning the game. And right now, you should see that with the expectations for Minnesota, where the Vikings currently have an implied team total of 26 points. They are currently about 5.5-point favorites over the Indianapolis Colts. So I think they can run the ball a little bit more. And then going over to David Montgomery, I do want to reiterate the Detroit Lions have had by far and away the best offense in the NFL so far this season. I think you can still say that is the case, but this is an in-division game on the road against a tough defense. Right now, the spread on this game is not massive. I'd be more excited about Montgomery in an environment where Jordan Love's not playing, because there I think the Lions can really control the game start to finish and just run the ball as they want to. You have back-to-back weeks here with Montgomery with fewer than 10 carries, but honestly, it's completely meaningless. He got hurt 2 weeks ago, and against the Titans, they blew him out. Now, going over to Washington, I am interested to see what sportsbooks are putting out right now. They have an implied team total of only 23.5 points for Washington. I would just assume that the Commanders go out there and they project offensively, similar to what you have with some of these other top offenses, such as the Atlanta Falcons this week. Going up against the Giants, it's not really a spot where I'm super scared of this defense. Obviously, the Steelers had no issues last week. Brian Robinson hasn't played 50% of the snaps since week 4, which is an interesting note. Obviously, the receiving usage has completely gone away for Brian Robinson. But against the Giants, right now you do have a pretty large spread on this game where the Commanders are currently sitting here as 3.5-point favorites. So I do think they'll be able to run the ball, especially if Jaden Daniels is healthy. And I know a lot of people are annoyed with us going, oh, the sportsbooks say this, sportsbooks say this. I do want to reiterate, we showed the historical data before the season started. Why sportsbooks are so valuable to use as projections is that they have proven over a large sample. They know more than you do. They know more than I do. If you think you can beat spreads, if you think you can beat over-unders from Las Vegas sportsbooks on these NFL games, I have other news for you. You can't. So we should use that data, such as the implied team total for each one of these teams, to try to get a sense of what the game environment will most likely be like, even if it's not a guarantee. Now, going over to Josh Jacobs. Jacobs, obviously, one of my guys this year. We are looking at this Packers offense, expecting it to be one of the best offenses in the league, expecting Jacobs to have that true 3-down workload based off his contract, based off what we had historically seen with the Raiders. And Jacobs, back-to-back games here with over 20 fantasy points. So obviously Jacobs is a running back that you absolutely have to start every single week, regardless of if it's Love, regardless of if it's Willis. You definitely prefer Jordan Love in here, so it's a good offense, but it is a tough matchup against the Lions. We are going to have to continue to update these rankings, of course, when we get additional news about Love. Going over to our next back, we're going to be looking at J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins, over the past 3 weeks since the bye, has completely taken over here, where you actually see 27 opportunities against the Broncos. The following week, you get 17 opportunities against the Cardinals. The week after, you get 24 opportunities against the Saints. And this past week against the Saints, J.K. Dobbins played 82% of the snaps, which is a career high. Dobbins has turned into a true 3-down workhorse running back. You're getting the receiving usage. You're going up against the Cleveland Browns here. There's not a massive spread on this game. I mean, right now, you do have the Chargers only as 2-point favorites, which honestly, I expected it to be a little bit higher, but I guess everybody's drinking the Jameis Winston Kool-Aid. Going over to our next guy, we're going to be looking at DeAndre Swift. With Swift, super comfortable projection, right? Just going through and looking at the opportunities that you've had in this offense since week 2. You had 19, 17, 23, 23, 21, 18. DeAndre Swift's effectively averaging 20 opportunities a game. You're going up against the Arizona Cardinals here. You do have this as a super close game with projections. The spread on this game's only about 1 point. What's a little bit frustrating is DeAndre Swift this past week didn't draw a target, but I do think that changes if you're looking at what we had before the bye week with the larger sample. Now, Kareem Hunt will be our next back. I know everybody screamed at us for not having Kareem Hunt as a running back 1 last week. We had Kareem Hunt as a running back 2 last week against the Raiders. I'm sorry, we're going to be putting him at the exact same place. Now, with that being said, with Kareem Hunt, I do want to acknowledge the fact that right now sportsbooks are giving a massive spread in this game against the Bucs. I was kind of surprised by this. I mean, the Bucs have been a great team so far this season, or at least a great offense. But right now, the Chiefs are favored by about 8.5 points. So the Chiefs want to run the ball. They should be able to run the ball. You have 3 straight games with over 20 carries for Hunt. Now, of course, with that being said, the reason why we don't have Hunt as an RB1, similar to what we had last week, was you don't have a receiving role. Not really. I mean, the last 3 games, you have 4 total targets. And on top of this, Kareem Hunt is a 29-year-old washed-up running back that's not going to be super efficient. Now, I understand people are going to scream at me for saying that, and clearly Kareem Hunt's better at the game of football than I am at anything in my entire life. But if we were going through and ranking running back talent at this point on NFL rosters, Hunt would not crack the top 32. In fantasy, he does because the situation's so great. James Conner will be our next guy. I don't love the matchup going up against Chicago. With Conner, don't love the fact you don't have much as a receiver. Don't love the idea that Kyler Murray could potentially take some rushing touchdowns. But it doesn't matter, right? James Conner still remains just an every week must-start running back. Currently RB12 in total points scored this season. Now, of course, he hasn't gone through a bye. He hasn't seen an injury. So it's definitely a very much a skewed number. But I mean, back-to-back weeks with over 80% of the snaps here for James Conner, where you'd expect, or at least I expected coming into the season, this is about the time where we were starting to see Trey Benson. Benson hasn't hit the field at all. Over the past 2 weeks, you've actually seen the season high with the snap rate for Conner. And then our last running back in this tier is going to be Tyron Tracy. Tracy went into concussion protocol. He had the concussion late Monday night. So if I'm going to be honest with you, I would probably assume that Tracy is going to be missing this next week. If Tracy does miss, Devin Singletary could be a viable play, but Singletary would be the tier below, and Singletary probably would be about RB28, RB29. I am surprised to see sportsbooks are a little bit higher on the Giants offense this week than they were on the Giants offense last week, but it's a good matchup against Washington. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to be looking at Chase Brown leading us off. With Chase Brown, super good matchup. I think you have to start him if you have him. I mean, you're looking at a running back that for the past 5 weeks has had at least double-digit carries, Over the past 5 weeks, you've had 18, 15, 13, 17, and 16 opportunities. So he's right there anywhere in that 15 to 18 opportunity mark. And this should be one of the best offenses in the league this week. This is a phenomenal matchup against the Raiders. And honestly, as I look at this, I'll probably move Chase Brown higher in our rankings. Now, Tony Pollard will be our next back. Pollard could end up falling. A lot of this comes down to what you're going to get with the availability of Tyjae Spears and Will Levis. Right now, you actually have the Titans favored in this game against New England, which is very much a surprise. I know the Patriots are bad, but the Titans just lost by 60 points. Also, back-to-back weeks here, you've seen over 80% of the snaps for Tony Pollard with no Tyjae Spears. If you go back to the first month of the season before Tyjae Spears got injured, you were looking at 61, 67, 63, and 60% of the snaps played in this offense by Pollard. So definitely you're getting the expanded role without Spears. If Spears comes back in, Pollard will fall a bit in these rankings. But based off the good matchup you have going up against New England, we can assume that maybe you're able to run the ball in. Crazy that the man logged 20 carries in a game where you lose by 45 points. Going over to our next back, we're going to look at Javante Williams. Javante really let me down this past week. I started him in the Flock League. I was expecting him to just absolutely dominate against Carolina. I don't know if I've ever seen this before. This is legitimately maybe the craziest thing I've ever seen with looking at these projections week to week. Last week, we actually had the Denver Broncos favored by, I want to say, about 9.5 to 10.5 points against the Carolina Panthers. And this week, you're actually looking at the Denver Broncos as 9-point underdogs against the Baltimore Ravens. I have never seen a swing like this. I literally had to double check this and triple check this 3 times. I mean, it's insane, but right now we're being told that while the Broncos have looked good over the past 2 weeks, they've looked great over the past 2 weeks, we should expect that to come to an end very, very soon, starting this week. And I mean, while, yeah, of course, the Broncos looked great, at the same time, they played the Panthers and then the Saints with no Olave, no Shaheed, and no Derek Carr. So this matchup is going to be so much tougher against the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens, great offense, not a great defense. But even with that in mind, Javante, you're probably not going to be able to see a bunch of rushing attempts in the second half. And yeah, I mean, if you just take a step backwards and you look at the Denver Broncos schedule so far this season, they've played some good teams. They really haven't played a great team yet. They've played Seattle, Pittsburgh, Tampa, the Jets, the Raiders, the Chargers, the Saints with no Carr, and the Carolina Panthers. It's like the first great team the Broncos are playing. Now, Ramondre Stevenson will be our next running back. I'm maybe a little too emotional here with Ramondre. I'm having a hard time keeping my feelings and my personal relationship with him out of this. Now, obviously, my relationship with him is he's on my fantasy football team. I benched him against the Jets, 23 points. I started against the Jags, 4 points. I benched him against Miami, 19 points. It has been the most frustrating thing in the world. You go back 2 weeks ago against the Jacksonville Jaguars, JaMychal Hasty plays more snaps. Antonio Gibson's involved. Ramondre's in a 3-man running back by committee. This past week against the Jets, he sees pretty much every single snap, every single touch. You're going up against the Tennessee Titans where, yes, you're an underdog in this game, but the New England Patriots could very easily win this. It's not like the spread's massive here. So from what we've had with Ramondre Stevenson so far this season, he's been a good play in the games in which the Patriots won. If the Patriots won the game, Ramondre Stevenson played well. You go back to Cincinnati, 21 points. Miami, 19. The Jets, 23. This is very much a winnable game here against the Tennessee Titans, even if they are technically underdogs. So I think you can start Ramondre. I won't be excited about it. I am actually going to move Chuba Hubbard down below Alexander Madison here. Alexander Madison will be our next RB. Obviously, I always assume that this is the worst offense in the league, but it's a pretty damn good matchup going up against the Cincinnati Bengals here. Now, I do want to reiterate, Alexander Madison is not a good running back, super inefficient. 3.8, the 0.25, 2.33, 12, 2.53, 2.36, 4, and then this past week, 1.07 yards per carry. It's a garbage offense. He had the opportunity in a better offense in Minnesota last year. He did absolutely nothing with it. So I don't think Madison's a great talent at the running back position. I don't think this is a great offense, but you're getting a ridiculous amount of opportunities. You're getting usage as a receiver, and it's a good matchup against Cincinnati. So I definitely think Alexander Madison can be a play this week. And then going over to Chuba Hubbard as our next option. With Hubbard, obviously, about a month ago, we called him a sell-high candidate. People hated us for it, but I mean, if we take a step back and look at what we have seen since then, I mean, he starts off 27 points, then down to 22, then down to 17, then down to 15, then down to 11, then down to 9. You're looking at Chuba Hubbard as a running back that has gotten worse every single week this season, starting in week 3. Now, of course, with that being said, this past week, you actually had a lot of Miles Sanders usage as a receiver. I think we had some rumors circulating that this is maybe leading to Miles Sanders getting traded. Maybe they're trying to just go out there and showcase that Miles Sanders has something and get a 7th round pick for him. I don't know. Obviously, if Jonathan Brooks does come back this week, however, you are moving Chuba Hubbard even lower down this list. Now, going over to our next RB, he's absolutely crushed over the past 2 weeks. Over the past 2 weeks, he's averaging over 20 points per game. Rashad White is in a very tough matchup this week against the Chiefs. If you're looking at White, you have an implied team total of only 18.5 points here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 18.5. This is the toughest matchup you could possibly ask for a running back in particular. And at the same time, while Rashad White has had the vast majority of the fantasy points in this offense over the past 2 weeks, if you look at the underlying usage, Bucky Irving's been very similar. There's not really a big gap between Bucky Irving and Rashad White in terms of the snaps, the carries, and the targets out of the backfield. So he's a committee back in what projects to be a bad offense in a horrible matchup this week. Not super excited. Rico Dowdle, I still think, is probably the starting running back here for the Cowboys. Obviously, we're going to have to monitor the reports that we get out of Dallas going through the week, but with the expectations that Dowdle's probably the starting running back, with the fact that this currently projects to be the highest scoring game in the NFL this week, I believe the over-under of this game's 53 points. I want as many players in this game as I can get into my starting lineup. I think the starting running back for one of these offenses wouldn't be the worst play. Going over to Nick Chubb, I mean, obviously, this does appear to be a better Cleveland Browns offense than what it was with Deshaun Watson. I definitely think that, of course, Winston's going to be better than Watson. I don't think you can make an argument against that. I do still expect to see some regression. I mean, Jameis had at least 3 interceptions dropped this past week. So, I don't know, similar to what we say after the Juju 130 receiving yard game, we go, okay, well, last time this man did this, it was 2018. It's probably not going to stay the course through the rest of the season. I think you can look at Jameis go. The last time he had a game this good was 2019. I don't know if the Browns are going to continue to go out there and take down top teams. I don't know if the Browns are all of a sudden a top offense. They are dogs in this game against the Chargers. Nick Chubb has no usage as a receiver. He should expand his role, though. I mean, you did go from 36% of the snaps against the Bengals to 61% against the Ravens. Bucky Irving will be our next running back. Like I said, I do think that if you look at the underlying usage here, I mean, Bucky Irving and Rashad White look to be very, very similar. I mean, Bucky did get the 7 receptions for 40 receiving yards, giving him that floor. I mean, 15 points this past week against the Falcons. It's just a very tough matchup that you have here against the Chiefs. Our next 2 running backs, I'm putting at 32 and 33 just because I have no idea how to rank them. We'll have both Tank Bigsby as well as Travis Etienne. Spread on this game is absolutely massive. I mean, right now you actually have the Eagles favored by a little over a touchdown. But with that being said, I still have no idea how to rank these players because if Travis Etienne's out, Tank Bigsby is going to be a lot higher. Obviously, if Etienne plays, I don't really know what we can expect from a split. And then our last tier will be these running backs that are more so premium handcuffs that will have a role with Raheem Mostert and Zach Moss. I probably should move Moss a little bit higher just because this is a phenomenal matchup going up against the Raiders. But again, I probably wouldn't look to start either one of these RBs. In the case of Mostert, you'd have the goal line role, which could potentially eat into the upside of what you get with Etienne. but I don't think Mostert himself is startable if you're looking at the fact that he has 0 usage as a receiver, and Achane can still very easily take the touchdowns at the goal line. Now, I really hope I was able to help you out with this. Of course, if you have not done so already, hit that like, subscribe if you play fantasy football. And if you wanted to tail us for that pick'em on Underdog on Thursday night, we are going to be going with Breece to score a touchdown. We are getting vulture protection with that on Underdog. So even if Braylon Allen scores a touchdown, we actually get a refund on it. If you're new to Underdog Fantasy, use promo code FLOCK, which will hook you up with a free CJ Stroud pick, more than less than half a total yard for that game, plus a free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single night, and a 50% deposit bonus as well. But thank you again. I really appreciate you and really hope I get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.